fall with the game, having my daughter there to experience it with her, seeing her emotions rise and fall, and to see that kind of a miracle finish, it says a lot about NFL football to me. That really talks about what it is. So I think the Vikings had a miracle season. It's tough to win in this league. They did a great job. And when it ends, it's always hard. But I think they should take a lot away from the season in a positive way. We're proud of the two teams we have here. They were #1 seeds. They deserve to be here. And that's how the game is played.
Hey, Roger, Ben Bowen from the Boston Globe. All out of Deflategate questions, so I'll let you off the hook there. But I want to ask you...
That's a shocker, Ben.
Yeah, all out. I think 4 years in a row is enough. I want to ask you about Thursday Night Football and this new deal you guys obviously announced today. Players have long complained about the player safety aspect of Thursday Night Football, and the NFL's answer has always been that the injury rate is lower on Sundays, or lower on Thursdays than it is the other days of the week. But for the first time ever in 2017, the injury rate was higher on Thursdays. So what's your comment on the injury rate going up on Thursdays, and will any steps be taken to make Thursday Night Football safer going forward?
Well, first, Ben, we always work to make the game safer. So we always look to see what we can do. Just to respond to the statistical aspect that you raised, out of the last 5 years where we've kept the sophisticated statistics that we have in injury data, out of those 5 years, only this year showed a slight uptick, which was not even statistical significant. So if you take it over any period of time during that 5 years, the injury rate is lower. So we do not think that that's something to overreact to. Second, I would tell you that Dee and I have already had some conversations about what it is we could do to address the players for either the time period leading up to the game or the time period following the game. I think the reaction is clearly mixed within the players that I've spoken to. Obviously, most players don't like a short week, but they sure do love the 10 days that come after that. And in fact, I can remember distinctly several conversations about this is like a mini bye. So don't put the Thursday game close to the bye week, because that's something we want to make sure that we have separated so we can get the benefits of both of those. So we'll always look to see, are there things that we can improve with our clubs, with our players, to try to make not only Thursday night, but all of our games more safer.
How are you, Commissioner? Luis Alberto Martinez from Televisa Deportes. Hope you had a good time in your last visit to Mexico City.
I did.
I want to hear from you the confirmation of next year's game in Azteca Stadium, and which are the league expectations for the upcoming years with these Mexico games.
Well, I did have a wonderful experience in Mexico City. The event has just grown every year that we've been there. The enthusiasm for our game continues to grow. The fan base wants more and more football, which is something we look forward to trying to meet that. We have an exciting game this year with the Rams and the Chiefs. We think that will be something the fans will love. We don't have the date yet because we're going to put it in our scheduling mix as we do with every other market. And I think that's something that, from our standpoint, just shows, I think, the sophistication and really the passion that the fans have there. We believe that that game has many more years ahead of it that will allow us to bring great football to our fans in Mexico.
Commissioner Jim Trotter from ESPN.
Hey, Jim.
This question may be better for the owners, but since they're not on the dais, I'll ask you. When you took office in...
I'm sort of used to that, Jim.
When you took office in 2006, there were 7 minority head coaches. Today there are 8. When you took office, there were 4 black general managers. Today there are only 3, only 2 of whom have authority in the decision-making process. When you took office, there were no black club presidents. Today that number remains the same. My question would be, why is the league having such a hard time promoting and hiring people of color to decision-making positions such as head coach and general manager?
Well, Jim, I think not only the Rooney Rule, but the efforts we have to train and give experience to coaches, executives, to advance their careers is something that we put a great deal of focus on. and I think has been successful. You see a lot of turnover in this business. You know that better than anybody. And that's something that happens. What we need to do is continue the work on developing that pipeline, getting the right kind of coaches with the right kind of experience that teams want to hire as head coaches. There's a lot of focus, as an example, the trend now is offensive coaches. We need to work to get more offensive coaches in a position, and African Americans that have offensive coordinator, quarterback coach experience, that will see them as the right kind of candidates. They're great coaches. We have to make sure we continue to get exposure for them and make sure that they get the opportunities. And that's where the Rooney Rule really works, in the sense of making sure that every club is required to not only interview, but also consider seriously candidates with diverse backgrounds and make sure that they're hiring the best people. And I think that served us well, but there's still a lot more work to do outside of the Rooney Rule, including, as you say, developing the pipeline.
Hey, Roger, Joe Person with the Charlotte Observer. I have two questions, if I could, related to Jerry Richardson's situation. The Panthers have long had a large base of PSL owners, as you know, and a streak of 160 consecutive sellouts. Will you look to stipulate to the next owner to keep the team in Charlotte? And then as it relates to the investigation, I don't think we've heard from you yet as to who's leading the investigation, the timeline of such, and whether there's safeguards in place for the investigation to continue after the sale of the team.
Well, let me address those in reverse order, Joe. The first one is Mary Jo White, who is got terrific experience, has been hired by us as an independent investigator. She has begun that process. She will do her work. The Panthers have given us full cooperation, given her full cooperation. And when that process is concluded, then we'll report at that point in time. Second, the second part was on the PSL holders and staying in Carolina. Any franchise relocation is subject to 3/4 vote. There isn't often a stipulation per se by that. I think all of us and the owners believe that Carolina is a great market. It's a market we would like to stay in, and we hope that the franchise owner that's eventually selected will have that view. As you know, that's subject to review by the ownership in the ownership process, and I'm sure that will be a question that many of our owners will ask, and I think that will clearly be the intent of our ownership.
Commissioner Brian Murphy with the St. Paul Pioneer Press. I wanted to follow up on the catch, no catch rule. Specifically, how will you encourage the competition committee to simplify the rule so it will embrace maybe some common sense and allow fans and players to have it pass the eye test?
Well, listen, Brian, let me just go back. You know, when we went through these 150 plays just a couple of weeks ago, we had Hall of Famers in there. And if when you say it makes sense, there are a lot of people who have different perspectives on that. There was a lot of disagreement in the room what a catch and what a catch wasn't. And so people with great football experience can disagree on that. As an example, I've said this before, but Chris Carter believes that you should make a catch, you should stand up and you hand it to the referee. And if you don't do that, it's not a catch. And I admire and respect him a great deal. But there are others who have a view, if you get possession of it and you get that second foot down, it's immediately a catch. So I think intelligent and thoughtful and people who have great football experience can disagree on what a catch is or what a catch isn't. From our standpoint, I think I would like to start back, instead of adding to the rule or subtracting the rule, is start over again and look at the rule fundamentally from the start. Because I think when you add or subtract things, you can still lead to confusion. And these rules are very complex. You have to look at what the unintended consequences are of making a change, which is what the competition committee, in my view, does so well and with so much thought. We're trying to supplement that here a little bit by, in advance of their analysis, giving them some thought starters of the ideas that we think we could focus on. My history on this, whether it's celebration rule or the extra point or any rule that we've implemented is that we try to encourage them to focus on 2 or 3 things that we think will make a big difference in our game. Clearly, catch, no catch has been a lot of discussion and a lot of disagreement over, and I think we can clarify this rule. I think we can do it with a lot of hard work, focus, and get to a place where I'm not going to tell you there won't be controversy, but I believe that we can get to a much better place.
Hi, Justin Dungy, NBC Sports. I witnessed a lot of amazing group celebrations by teams. What's your thoughts on the celebrations, and are you going to make any changes next season to make it more entertaining for kids?
Well, Justin, it's a great question. I think that the rule changes that we made this past off season really achieved what we wanted. It allowed the players to express their enthusiasm, their passion, their individualism, and it sounds like you agree with that. Is that correct? And I think it did it in such a way as, frankly, the players took ownership of it. When we made this rule change, Troy Vincent and I spent an awful lot of time. I think we spoke to over 100 players at various times in the spring about what the parameters were, what we were trying to achieve. And they truly took ownership and said, we understand what you're trying to achieve. We understand what we have to do to be responsible in this area and do it with class, not to do it in a way that in any way can look like we're taunting our opponents. And they did a great job of it. I think we had 4 penalties the entire season here. And I think that's a significant shift, and I'm glad to hear that not only the younger generation, but I think most generations appreciate it. I think we'll continue in your second part of your question about what do we do to make the game more attractive to the younger generation. A part of that is making the game available on the platforms in which you spend most of your time. That could be a mobile device of some type, phone or tablet. It also would be working on new opportunities to engage with fantasy football, which isn't new, but esports is growing out of that opportunity through Madden esports. And we see that as a great opportunity to engage our fans on different platforms in different ways, and frankly, maybe even all year round, because the games obviously aren't going to be played all year round. But we're going to come to you as the next generation and bring football to our fans and allow them to engage. Thanks, Justin.
Hi, Roger. Good afternoon. Dan Kaplan with Sports Business Journal. In December, when your new contract extension was announced, your chief spokesman said it would likely be your last, but you told reporters later that day that you didn't agree with that. Do you envision this, that you'll serve another term beyond this current extension?
Dan, I honestly can't tell you exactly what I said, but I have not given any consideration. I just signed a new contract. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to stay focused on that. I'm not thinking about a next one, or I'm thinking about the challenge that we as a league have, how we can continue to grow this league, how we can make it better. And that's on a variety of fronts that we've talked about, whether that's continuing to evolve and have the best labor agreement, which we think we have, whether that's continuing to build our media business in a thoughtful, smart way, which I think this morning's announcement on Thursday Night Football shows the strength of our content. It shows the strength of our game. We had every network that was interested in that. We had very aggressive bidding. And we see that our content, even in an environment that's changing very dramatically in the media world, we're seeing our content stand above everything else. And that's something that we're excited about. One of the reasons we're so optimistic about the future, but it's also something that I have to spend my next several years focusing on. And I'm going to fulfill this contract and do the best I possibly can, and we'll worry about that another day. You might also have to talk to my wife about that, Dan. So.
Hi, Roger. Michael David Smith with Pro Football Talk. You cited the Rooney Rule in response to the previous question about diversity, but the Raiders were found to have complied with the Rooney Rule even though they first agreed to hire John Gruden and then only after that interviewed minority candidates. So how is that promoting diversity if a team isn't really considering the candidates that they're interviewing?
Well, Michael, let me say that there was a full investigation of that by our staff. They went through it in great detail. They spoke to every one of the participants to make sure that we checked the facts. I would say that the conclusion of the investigation doesn't jive with what you just stated in your question, and that it was actually in compliance with the Rooney Rule. So I think we'd have a disagreement on the facts, but that's fair for you to have it. But we've spoken to every single one of those individuals and made sure that that was the case.
Roger, Mark Maskey from the Washington Post.
Yeah, Mark.
When the owners met in October in New York, there was no action taken regarding the anthem policy, no changes made. Do you expect that issue to be revisited by ownership at March meeting or May meeting or beyond? And do you anticipate any changes being made?
Mark, I think our focus is going to continue on building the platforms that the owners and players spent a great deal of time with unprecedented dialogue creating those platforms all season long. I think we're excited by that. You all know that we created a committee of owners and players that have met in person once, on the phone a second time, and will meet again sometime in the next 30 days. And the efforts there are to continue to make recommendations to our players, to our ownership, on what we can do to evolve that platform, make the platform effective in what the players were really interested in, which is making our communities better, to seeing injustices that they see in their local communities that we can address collectively and support our players in that. So that's why I think where our focus will remain.
Jose Villalba from Multimedios and Milenio in Mexico. I was wondering if with all the stuff of the future games in Mexico, if there was a plan, talks with other cities other than Mexico City, maybe Monterrey or Guadalajara, to maybe have future games, stadiums, constructions possibly on Monterrey. And second part, did you talk to Robert Kraft, owner of the Patriots, or Bill Belichick about Belichick's comments over after the game in Mexico, in which he said something that they were fortunate there were any earthquakes or volcanic eruptions during the time in Mexico? Could you answer both of these questions, please?
Yes, I think we know there's interest in other cities in Mexico other than Mexico City. We have played in other cities, as you know, and we think that that's something we may consider in the future. But right now, we have such a great arrangement in Mexico City with the stadium, with the authorities, with the fan base there, that I think we want to continue and build on that. We want to keep the focus on that and make it even more successful than it is today. The second part of your question is, listen, all the players, coaches, ownership comments, we take all of that in. I'm not going to address that specific comment because that should be addressed by either Coach Belichick or the Crafts. From our standpoint, the host we had in Mexico City, the experience we had in there was terrific. People could not have been more supportive. We were glad to be there to try to help the community recover from the tragic earthquake that they had. And we participated in rebuilding a school there. That was something that was very important to us and the teams, including the Patriots and the Raiders. And we look forward to going back.
Roger, Bob Glauber from Newsday. Following up on Mark's question about the anthem, will there be any consideration to keeping the teams in the locker room while the anthem is played? And also, as a follow-up, have you spoken at all to President Trump about his frequent criticism of players who do protest during the anthem?
The answer to your second question is no. The answer to your first question is I don't know what we'll consider in the offseason. I'm still trying to get through the Super Bowl. We'll spend and turn our attention to the priorities in the offseason, with the one exception of the competitive issues, which we always start immediately after the regular season, frankly, even during the regular season, because the competition committee gets started right away. In fact, I think we have our first meeting of the competition committee next week.
Hey, Roger. Tom Lydon, Boston 25 News. In a league that's built for parity, what does it say to you that the Patriots have been able to put together this incredible run of success? And I guess at the end of the day, from a league perspective, do you consider it to be good for business?
Well, I think the competitive nature of our league, and I mentioned it in my opening remarks, I think we have something truly unique in this league. 8 of 12 teams that didn't make the playoffs before, 2 of the 4 championship teams that played in the championship game were in last place and went to first in their division and went to the championship game. That's extraordinary. And I think that's great for our league. What I think it does say is the incredible achievement that the Patriots as a team, as an organization, have achieved. It's really remarkable that they're in, and going for their 3rd Super Bowl in 4 years in this kind of a system where keeping that group together, changing whatever they need to change, whether it's players or coaches, or they do that in a way and still create success. I just think that I marvel at that. I think our other clubs marvel at that. I think fans marvel at that. And I think the balance of having new teams with teams that continue to find ways to win is a great thing for the NFL. And I think it's a great thing for our fans. So you can continue to win, and then also there are teams that can surprise you. And I think that's what makes our game special.
Thank you. Commissioner Emilio Leon, Frog Sports, Latin America. Going back to the Mexico game, do you have any date? Is it going to be a noon game, a late night game, Thursday, Sunday, Monday? Could you tell us, please?
I can't, because we're going to do that in the context of our overall scheduling. It probably won't be determined sometime in mid-April, as we normally do. It's something that we want to make sure we do it when it's a good moment, obviously, in Mexico, but it has to balance in with the rest of our scheduling. So I would expect that we'll probably play sometime in the same period of November, but those decisions will be made sometime in the next few months.
Roger, Ian Rappaport, NFL Network. Vince McMahon recently announced that he's rebooting the XFL in a couple years. Wondering what your reaction was when you heard that, and do you think it has a chance to be successful, and can it help the NFL in any way?
Ian, honestly, I've been so focused on the NFL postseason and some of the other work we've been done. I obviously am aware of the announcement. I haven't focused on it. We've had several proposals that come direct to us about various forms of spring football that we have considered over the years. We continue to look at that. As you know, and I think we feel very strongly, we want to make sure our game stays strong for the long term. So the opportunity to develop more players, to give them opportunities to play the game so that they can reach the highest level of the NFL is something we always try to do. So we'll consider all these if we're asked to be involved. If not, there may be opportunities where those players get the opportunity to play in the NFL someday. That's great for us. So we'll have to see. I just don't know enough specifics of that proposal.
Commissioner Goodell, Darren McKee, 104.3 The Fan in Denver. In light of Pat Bowlen's health issues, he has given over day-to-day control of the Broncos ownership, and Joe Ellis has done a wonderful job running the team. However, in the trust that he set up, one of the Bowlen children is to get ownership of the Broncos. Beth Bowlen is clearly the most qualified candidate in terms of age and experience, while the other adult children that are qualified are younger. So it's unlikely things are going to change in this situation for the foreseeable future. What is the NFL doing to ensure a proper transfer of ownership to the most qualified of the Bowlen children to go along with what Pat Bowlen wanted?
Well, Darren, I think it goes back first to the last point you made. You made a lot of points there that some of which I'd agree and some of which I wouldn't. But the focus is what Pat Bowlen wanted and how he set this up. Having been very close to Pat, I care very much about him, his family, his health, and he was an extraordinarily important person to the NFL when he was active in the league, and he continues to be somebody that we all admire and care for his health. Second, he was very active in making sure that he did exactly that, which is how do I make sure that the Broncos franchise continues to be successful? I want it to be a point of pride for the people in the Denver community in Colorado. I want it to be something that the NFL is proud of, my partners are proud of, meaning the other 31 clubs. He's done an extraordinary job of setting that up. those decisions, many of which you discussed in your question, I think are all questions of that the trustees have to decide. They are in compliance with our rules. They have been very thoughtful. They have done a terrific job of leading that franchise over the last several years as Pat's focused on his health issues. And I think Pat put that in place because of the care and focus and the importance of the Broncos to him, and making sure that it will continue to be in the right hands and with the right kind of leadership. Yes.
Hi, Commissioner. My name is Manasir Boina. I'm the NFL Play 60 Super Kid. My question to you is, many people look up to you as a role model and an inspiration. Do you have a inspiration or role model you look up to?
Well, that's very nice. I would tell you that I've been very fortunate in my life to have a lot of role models. And I would encourage, and I just met with my local high school on career day, and I spent a lot of time talking about this. In life, you have a lot of role models, hopefully. You have a lot of people that are mentors and people who help you along the way. And I certainly wouldn't have the opportunity to be here without a lot of people who supported me, helped me, guided me, told me when I was wrong, and I still do. And I'm very fortunate to have that. So I guess I would tell you, I'd encourage you to have as many people in your life who will help you think through the challenges that you'll have undoubtedly in life, and make sure that you're getting the right perspective, and not just the perspective you want, but the perspective you need. And make sure that that helps guide you along the way, because it's important in life to make sure that you're making the best possible decisions, and the only way you can do that is with a lot of people helping you along the way.
Roger, Tom Pelissero, NFL Network, and last year's NFL Play 60 Super Kid. Eagles receiver Torrey Smith became the latest player yesterday to express frustration that Colin Kaepernick does not currently have a job in the NFL. Have you had any contact with Colin? And considering that teams make the decisions about who's on their roster, is there anything you could or would do to try to facilitate him having another opportunity?
Hey, Tom, listen, I've been very clear on this before, that all the clubs individually have to make their own decisions about who's on the roster, who's not on the roster. Colin, as you know, has filed a grievance, so I'm not going to talk specifically about that case. But I think that's something that the clubs have to make that decision. And, you know, we as a league do not get involved with that in any way. So I don't anticipate that in any way.
Good day, Commissioner.
I'm sorry, Mr. Neal. Okay.
Good day, Commissioner. Alvin Whitney, CNN Sports.
Hey, Alvin.
Recently, Brett Favre was, actually this week, was interviewed about the safety of the game, and his response was, you just don't play. The helmet can do but so much. What are the plans for the NFL to make the game safer from the youth level all the way up to the NFL levels when the Hall of Famer is saying don't play?
Well, I don't think that's exactly the way the interview went as I heard it, but I would tell you this, that this has been a major focus for us in trying to make our game safer at our level and all the way through every level of football, down to Pee Wee football. Part of that comes in the training of coaches, the using the proper techniques, whether they're tackling, running, catching, making sure that we have the best possible equipment, and that involves investing in research to make sure that the equipment advances so that we can do that. And I think you've seen those changes. I think they've had dramatic impact across all levels of football. And I just said this to our local high school team recently, that the game of football is much safer than when I played it. But that's part of our responsibility, and we take that seriously, and it's something we'll continue to focus on and make our game the great game that it is, but also as safe as possible.
2 more questions.
Hi, Roger. Michael Gelkin, Las Vegas Review-Journal. The Raiders are slated to play a home game internationally for the 4th time in 5 years this October. As you might imagine, this isn't the most popular of trends in the Bay Area, where Raiders fans are slated to lose their team in a couple of years to relocation, and they want to see as much of their team as possible before they leave the market. What do you say to those fans, and what is the importance of that resolution for teams that are part of the relocation process to commit to playing home games abroad?
Well, it's part of what we all agreed is 32 clubs, which is what dictates that we want to continue to share our game with our fans on a global basis. Clubs have been very anxious to do that. I think in the UK, at the end of this season, I think we'll have 30 of the 32 teams that have played in the UK. I think that's terrific for our game. I think it's terrific for our clubs, and I think it's great for the fans. So yes, that comes with sacrificing from time to time home games. Yes, the Raiders have had more of their international games recently. That's a fact, and it's correct. And it's true that we have teams in transition, as you point out, from temporary stadiums to long-term facilities. We do the best of balancing that. The Raiders are an attractive team globally. We know how much and how passionate the fans are there in Oakland. We want to deliver that as much as possible, but we also want to continue to expand our game.
Last question.
Roger, Jason Winnicott, Dallas Sports Source. You mentioned 5 years ago when I asked about innovation that it's a big part of everything the NFL does, and that certainly includes international growth. With respect to China, what do you envision the league achieving there within the next 7 years, despite having to play by their terms, their rules, their regulations, and having to innovate on the small provincial level rather than innovating quickly on a big national scale like the NFL is capable of doing in other places?
Well, Jason, you play by the rules that you've been given, for one. Two is, I think actually our opportunities are even greater now than they were 5 years ago. And it's because of that innovation, it's because of technology. We now have the ability, and our relationship with Tencent is a great example of that, where we can get direct to consumers. We can deliver our content, our games through various technology, through media platforms that fans didn't have the opportunity to get before. And so that's a great advantage for us and for, frankly, all content. And we plan to continue to aggressively do that. We had tremendous spikes this year from the first year of our deal with Tencent. And we think that what we're doing is working. Would we like to accelerate that? Yes, but that's what you work with great partners, particularly in China. That's something that we'll do, and I think we'll have better results over the next 5 years.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
In front of the helmet. Just stand right in the middle. Yep. Perfect. All right.